Good morning. Welcome back to Stories with Pastor Macy. I apparently started a story there and didn't know that I had started it. So, started filming. So, we're ready now. We're back. Let's go ahead and start. Happy Wednesday. I hope you are having a good week. You're halfway done with another week. So, good job. We have been learning about some Bible characters, and we have read a few stories out of this series, the Bible Learn series, which was published in the 80s and is a wonderful series published by a Baptist printer for Pacific Press. And yesterday we read the first story in the book about Philip, the traveling preacher. And so today I thought we've read a lot of parts of stories out of this series, but we've never finished one of the books in the series. So I thought, why don't we spend the next couple of days and finish the book about Philip, the traveling evangelist. So it's a chapter book. You can see here all of the chapters. Yesterday we read the young Philip, and today we're going to go ahead and read the next couple of stories. Now, we don't have a lot of information about Philip in the Bible. So a lot of these stories use some imagination in order to fill in the details. So this series has a nice little note at the end of the first story that says, this is a maybe story. Maybe it happened, but our Bible does not give us all the story of Philip's life. The Bible does give us some important facts about Philip, and those are included in the story. So today we're going to read the second chapter of the story about Philip, the traveling preacher, and it is called The Turning Point. Many years had passed. Philip had closed his father's shop in the marketplace. He and his mother, a widow now, were again preparing for a trip to Jerusalem. But this trip was quite different from the ones before. Everything they owned was packed. Jerusalem was to be their new home. Philip had recently made a wonderful discovery, and his whole life was changed. A few months earlier, on a visit to Jerusalem, an unusual thing had happened. Philip had heard the wonderful story of Jesus, the Messiah. Philip was in Jerusalem during the yearly celebration called Pentecost. He was inside the walled city, busily buying goods for his shop back home. As he worked his way through the crowded streets, he came to an open area where the streets joined together. There was a man speaking from the steps of a building. A crowd was beginning to gather as Philip came up. Philip was curious and stopped to listen. As he became more interested, he worked his way up closer to the speaker. Welcome, Athena and Tony and Jason and Thomas and Philip and Lucas and KJ. A hush had fallen over the crowd, for the tall man spoke with great authority. Philip turned to a woman next to him and asked, "Who is the man speaking?" "Oh, he's one of the followers of Jesus. Some people call him Simon Peter or the fisherman," she replied. Philip listened carefully that day as Peter spoke. The words were strange to him. Jesus is God's Son. He loved you so much that he died for you. God raised him from the dead. He is risen. We have seen him. He is the living Messiah. Believe that Jesus is God's Son. Be baptized, and God will save you from your sins. Peter's words reminded Philip of the longing in his heart for the Messiah. Could this one of whom Peter spoke be the Messiah, the one my family and I have prayed for through the years? Philip thought. The words Peter preached were good news to Philip, and he wanted to become a follower of Jesus. He eagerly accepted the good news and became a part of a group of believers in Jerusalem. Philip was not the only one who believed. About 3,000 other people accepted the good news, believing that Jesus was the Messiah, God's Son. As soon as Philip could get back home, he shared the experience with his mother. They were excited and very happy. Plans were finally made to sell the shop, their house, and many of their possessions. They were going to Jerusalem to live near others who believed Jesus was God's Son. So one of the reasons I like this series of books is it has a little think back section with some questions at the end of every story. So here's the think back for this section. This section is a maybe story also. The Bible does not tell us when Philip came to Jerusalem or when he became a Christian. The Bible does help us know these facts. At some time in his younger life, Philip became a Christian. For a while, Philip lived in Jerusalem. He was busy in the Jerusalem church. Welcome, Arna. For you to think about, do you believe that Jesus is God's Son? What does being a Christian mean to you? Why is attending church, or right now, maybe calling other believers on the phone, why is that important? So let's go ahead and read one more chapter today out of our book, Philip the Traveling Preacher. This section is called Deacon in the Church. Philip was happy to be with the other Christians in Jerusalem. They came together every day to pray and to hear the apostles teach. Philip was always present, eager to learn more and more about Jesus. Day by day, the church grew larger, and the apostles had to give more and more of their time to feeding the widows and giving money out to the poor. Philip helped them whenever he could. One evening, Peter called the other apostles together and said, "We're spending too much time doing things other than praying and preaching. Yesterday, I worked all day at the alms table giving out money. I had no time to pray, and I didn't get to preach the good news of Jesus anywhere. We need to spend our time preaching and teaching all over the city." John spoke up. "Yes, and we're also having some complaints from the Greek-speaking widows. They say they are not receiving as much food and money as the Palestinian widows do. Why don't we ask the church to choose some good, honest men to help us?" Matthew suggested. "That's a good idea, Matthew," Peter replied. "I'll suggest this to the church tomorrow." The apostles prayed together, thanking God for giving them an answer to their problem. Welcome, Susie. The next day, Peter called the church together and said, "Choose 7 men from among you to help us in our work. These men should be honest and good. They should be able to work well with all the people. We need to spend our time preaching and teaching." The church was happy with the suggestion that Peter made. One of the members stood and said, "The men we choose need to be good businessmen too. They will have to handle the money from the offerings for the poor." Another member stood and said, "Let's choose men who have a Greek background so they can help in a special way with the widows who are not being helped." "These are good suggestions," Peter said. "Now go out and find 7 men who are like the ones we've talked about. Look carefully and ask God to guide you." As the church began to search for 7 men, they chose Philip and Stephen and 5 others: Prochorus, Nicanor, Timon, Parmenas, and Nicolaus. These 7 men became good workers in the church. They had learned well from the apostles and had proven themselves to be honest and faithful followers of Jesus. When the church gathered again, they brought the 7 men to the apostles for their approval and blessing. The apostles prayed for the new leaders and placed their hands on them as a sign of their blessing in their new work. Philip thought as he prayed quietly, Jesus, help me to be a good worker. Show me how to help others and share the good news of Jesus. With the 7 men called deacons helping the apostles, the church in Jerusalem grew even faster. And here are our think back questions for this story. Why did the church in Jerusalem need deacons? Can you describe the kind of people the early church chose to help the apostles? Do you know a deacon in your church? So, I want you to think how you can be a good helper today. How can you make someone's life easier or make their day a little more joyful? And I hope that you will think about that and do that today. Thank you so much for joining me for Stories with Pastor Macy. I'll see you tomorrow when we finish up our book about Philip, the traveling preacher. Have a blessed day.